Thank you, Lucas, so much, and thank you all from the Northwest Eco Building Guild for inviting me here and witnessing our project and coaching us, everybody. It was really a great process to be involved so far. My name is Susan Jones. I'm the principal, I'm an architect, and I'm the principal of Atelier Jones, which is a small architectural firm in Seattle. We've been around about 12 years, and our office is downtown. I'm talking about our CLT house, which is a small house in Madison Park. When I was 5 years old, my grandfather took me by the hand and we walked through this forest. They were little trees planted everywhere, Douglas fir trees, spruce, pine trees. My grandfather told me that when I was an adult, all of these trees would be grown up and ready to harvest. He could see the forest of the future, and he was proud of what he had planted for his grandchildren. And 45 years later, my family remembered what he had told us, and we revisited the forest. We looked for the Douglas fir and the spruce and the pine trees, and they were not to be found. Instead, there were hundreds of hemlock trees everywhere, not even very big hemlock trees. They were all crowded close together, and they were rather small, 6, 8, 10 inches, even after 45 years of growing. So we talked to the foresters, we talked to the ecologists, and we learned that an unmanaged forest is not a natural forest. Indeed, for 45 years, our forest had been an abandoned forest. And so what we learned was that our forest had become a victim of what is called the hemlock scourge, and that the hemlock scourge was slowly overtaking many other unmanaged forests, with small, quick-growing hemlock trees crowding against one another all over the western part of the state of Washington. After learning all of this, we also learned that what many Europeans had known for a long time, that if managed properly, growing small diameter trees is a way to keep forests healthy and trees healthy, and to keep a wood supply flowing, and to keep trees sequestering carbon. Lots of carbon. Carbon in the small harvested wood, carbon in the trees that would be replanted, and carbon in the trees still growing. So our family learned how to manage our forest, and we took down a lot of the small hemlock trees, and we let the Douglas fir trees get bigger, get light and air, and then we planted more Douglas fir and western white pine trees. And now we have a managed forest for my grandfather's great-grandchildren's future. I also learned that for 2 decades, the Europeans had been making a very strong wood panel called cross-laminated timber, and that it was made up of small pieces of all the small diameter trees, and that they were all finger jointed together. And I looked at the wood panels and said to myself, these are beautiful. I want to make a house out of this constructed wood. I want to use this wood, this new kind of Northwest wood. I want to live with this wood, explore this new material, experiment and build with it. The panels were exciting. Not only were they good at sequestering carbon, they were smart and high-tech, and they could have openings cut in them for light and for utilities. They could be assembled very fast together on a construction site with just a couple of guys and a construction crane. And even when they were put together and made into a house, they still sequestered carbon. And all of the new trees growing in the well-managed forests were also still sequestering carbon. And all of the FSC trees that had been replanted after the panels were harvested from them were also sequestering carbon. And I learned that the panels could also replace other materials, including even the structure and the gypsum wallboard interiors, so that you could just leave the wood exposed on the interior, just like that, and replace even more carbon-emitting materials. The edges of the panels could be mitered together to make very beautiful spaces to capture light and space in a very warm way. And all of this brought back memories of growing up in Bellingham and on Orcas Island, where my family would visit my grandmother's cabin, and how we would travel on the highway and on the ferry and on the little roads and on the gravel road, and then finally we would open the door of the little cabin and be immersed in the wood and the smells and in the light of a cabin very far away. And how the cabin was small and wooden and beautiful. And I thought, what about making a new kind of small wooden beach cabin, an urban beach cabin in the city, one that would be very beautiful and sequester so much carbon at the same time. So we began. My architectural firm, Atelier Jones, researched over 4 years, and we learned a lot about cross-laminated timber. I called around the country and up to the far reaches of northern Quebec. I talked to Swiss lumbermen and Canadian businessmen. I taught a studio at the University of Washington, and with my 12 excellent students, we researched a lot about this CLT. And with my firm, Atelier Jones, we researched a lot on how to build with this new kind of wood, a new Northwest wood to make a new Northwest beach cabin in the city. We learned that America was actually far, far behind in making these CLT panels, and that the closest panels we could even find were in British Columbia from a company called Structurlam, and that they made CLT panels from FSC plant certified wood, the very highest standards of forest certification. And we visited Structurlam, and we learned how they made the panels, and then we learned how to coordinate with their CNC computer programs and shop drawings so that when the panels arrived on our site, they would fit together perfectly. And so the contractor would not be too worried about how to build with the brand new materials. And then I also learned that our family would have to buy the panels separately because the banks would not lend us any money for this new type of construction. But finally, a year ago, our family ordered the panels, and last December they arrived at the site for the contractor to assemble in just 12 crane days. Now the house is finished, and all the carbon is safe inside the panels and safe in the growing house, in the growing trees. Our 1,500 square foot house will be certified built green 5-star. It has beautiful triple glazed Euroclimb windows and doors and uses passive house techniques to make thick R35 walls and an R49 roof. It is projected to use 38% less energy than our energy codes require. There are rooftop planters on the roof deck that grew tomatoes all summer and pumpkins all fall. And there was a long, slow gravel walk up to a simple wooden porch that makes you feel like you are walking into a beach cabin when you arrive. Inside, the house is built around a small courtyard that lets lots of light in, and we designed a central core to house most of the utilities up and down, from the basement HRV and the tankless gas hot water heater, up to the upstairs bathrooms and the rooftop deck. The little Philips Ladino lights fill in the holes of the panels that were used for lifting the panels with the crane, and the 3-ply edges of the panels are left exposed to explain the story of the house to all who visit. We lightly whitewashed the wooden panels and had fun with some of the smart panels, turning them into a CNC routed wooden screen that makes light patterns all over the floor and the bed of my daughter's bedroom. And with its thick R5 wooden CLT panels wrapped up in lots of thick mineral wool, our house is very quiet, filled with the light scent of western white pine. And with its high, upward-reaching light vaults, it is very light-filled and very natural feeling. And every time we come home, we feel like we are going to our own beach cabin in the city. But we often think about all the trees that are growing up in Canada that replace the trees for our panels, sequestering the carbon, and how all the wooden walls and ceilings and floors in our house are sequestering the carbon, and how all the trees that we replanted on my grandfather's land are sequestering carbon. And we realized with my office and my students that we could actually count the panels and count the amount of wood and count the trees and count the acres that the trees needed to grow on. We counted 20 trees that the panels were made from. We often think what our site might have looked like a long time ago, with 20 trees growing on it, sequestering carbon a long time ago. Thinking about all the carbon copies of our house, from the ancient site before the city, to our beautiful CLT house with its FSC carbon copy, and to the other carbon copy of our now managed forest of my grandfather, makes us very, very happy. For with all these carbon copies sequestering carbon, we are very hopeful that my grandfather's great-grandchildren and all the other great-grandchildren of the world might have a very wonderful, wonderful future. Thank you.